Well, hey, everybody. It's been a long time. Welcome back to the Snap No Tap podcast. We have some changes. We're with Martin Witkowski, which is great. And let me just give you guys a quick synopsis here. Joe Cardinal's taking a little break. You know, with his looks, I mean, there's been mob scenes wherever he goes, and you know, it's overexposure for him. So he's taking a little break from this, and I apologize for my throat, but I just had some surgery inside, so my voice is still a little rugged. But we're trying, and so Martin's going to step in for a while and do the podcasts. And what we're going to do is we're going to change the format a little bit of the podcasts. We're going to shorten them up a bit, and we're going to make them pretty instructional. So today is going to be kind of an experiment. As you notice, we didn't have an intro because that's all on Martin's end to do, and we got to figure it out. But we're also going to play some video clips throughout this podcast, a couple, I think, one or two at least. And so bear with us if there's any technical glitches. But anyway, I'm going to turn the lead over to Martin because I've been told that everybody feels a lot better when there's a Polish man in charge. So how you doing, Martin?
I'm doing great, Tony, and I do apologize for the technical issues because Joe just makes everything look so easy. He's not only a beautiful man, but he's also so talented. So I'm going to be struggling through this, but I will get better as we go through it and repeat things. I wanted to throw it to you right away, Tony. We had a seminar a couple weeks ago, and we have covered some basic boxing things, and you've gone through some techniques. And I kind of wanted to focus on one technique or maybe two techniques that we can kind of see in real life application in sports, in highlights, and kind of go over how you see that application of that technique being executed in a professional setting. And there's plenty of examples of that, and it doesn't have to be something crazy sophisticated, something that everybody can use.
Yeah, we discussed that a lot. And frankly, when you say crazy sophisticated, if it's crazy sophisticated, it's got a lower chance of getting pulled off. It's the simplest and most beautiful moves that tend to work, not this fancy stuff. So up front, for those who know me, that this is a kind of a repeat, but for those who may be new, I'm a firm believer that when it comes to hand strikes, boxers are the best in the world. I'm saying that overall, generally. Obviously, you have boxers that aren't very good, but you have some that are great. But as you know from training, it's more than just throwing punches. It's head movement, it's footwork. There's so much to it. And I think a lot of people that they don't understand the concepts of it. They don't, they don't dig deep enough to understand it. And they called boxing the sweet science for a reason. It's some of the stuff that they do is just, fantastic.
Yeah, but it's also kind of a very simple way of doing things. Like we've talked about this before. There's this focus on YouTube in particular for people to over complicate things by having all these different scenarios and having a correct reaction for different scenario. Like what happens when you get thrown through a door, and what happens if somebody throws a chair at you. But I think we've discussed several times how you're much better off being very competent at something very basic that you can apply across all situations, such as a good jab. And, you've covered jabbing techniques before versus, if I get thrown through a glass window, I need to tuck my chin in and roll and then throw my left leg out. Who's gonna do that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly right. Yeah, it just boils back down to mastering the fundamentals, and uh, fundamentals are like meat and potatoes, right? Kind of bland, you think, right? But it's substance. You have to have that. And yeah, you're right. I do believe that so many people want to distinguish themselves from other people, so that they overcomplicate things. There's a difference between really explaining it down to the nth degree, which I'm all about. And I've tried to do that on my videos for since the 90s, 30 years almost, whatever. And but you're right. There's people who make it way too complicated, and it's never going to work. Uh, it's chaotic, even for the most well-trained fighter or well-trained athlete. It becomes chaos, and you have to have that muscle memory and those gross motor skills. And number one is you in a fight, you can't get taken out. You can't get knocked out or rendered, put on Queer Street. So defense plays a lot of, important role in it as well. Without a good, they always say the best defense is a good offense, but really you've got to have a good defense, because if you get hit once or twice, or maybe even just once is enough, you may not have a chance for offense.
Right. So maybe let's get right into it. One of the things that I was trying to focus when we were doing a little bit of sparring and you were showing us how to do stuff. I'm an old man, so I really want to focus on the things that will make a bigger difference to me. Like I don't want to do anything stupid at my old age, so I need to focus on things that will give me the biggest benefit. So one of the things that we talked about is how you really can't fight or box straight up because it has consequences to your head being reachable. And there's good examples in recent fights with these big men, because every heavyweight these days is gigantic, fighting a very tall game because a lot of their opponents aren't. And consequently, there's been a couple of knockouts where a guy would literally pull straight back and a follow-up right would catch him. And they were fairly devastating knockouts.
Yeah, you've sent me a couple of links, or clips, I should say, or links to clips. And yeah, exactly right. Here's like a rule of thumb. Psychologically, you want to make yourself appear large, right? But realistically, you want to be a very small target. You don't want to be a large target, okay? And I want people to really understand that. I don't care how big you are, how small you are. You don't want to be, physically, your stature. You do not want to present a large target. That just gives people more things to attack. But it also throws you off as far as your balance, your footwork, uh, your movement. And I'm not saying to roll up into a ball or fight like really under like a crouching position, but yeah, don't present a large target. Don't be very upright like this. You've got to be set. Lower your center of gravity a little bit and be, sit down a little bit. We call it in boxing, sitting down on your punches, but yet not to the point where you're a statue and you can't move. You have to find your own personal balance. So yeah, don't present yourself as don't give this guy a lot of target. And yeah, when you're upright, what ends up happening is you stick your chin out, which is, me, I bitch about that all the time because that's just ridiculous. But if you bring your hands up, now you're opening up your torso too. So you've got to try to scrunch in a way, but where you're comfortable. So and then you can lurch. You can boom. You can explode into your attacks.
Right. I'm going to try to play this while we talk through it. But I also heard the term of something called I believe a shuffle on a pullback. So in this case, when you had these are some big dudes
Right.
fighting, and
Who am I supposed to be? Who's getting knocked out here, so I know what to watch.
so these are two guys. This is an older fight. This is Robert Helenius and Gerald Washington, and Robert Helenius got knocked out recently in a similar way. So what ends up happening is that he fights very upright,
Okay,
and
can
then
you
he pulls.
replay that again? Just
Yeah, of
replay
course.
that.
And then he pulls his head back,
Okay, well, let's
but he doesn't move his body.
Yeah, everything right now. Okay, I want everybody to realize that this is nothing personal. I don't know these people, but you can see mistake number one. The biggest mistake is he's wide open. His hands are down. His left hand is down. Look, his face. He's leading with his chin. His left hand was damn near on his hip. If there's a way that you can pause this, play it again and pause it right before the punch lands, like right coming up,
Yeah, he's set for it.
boom. I mean, look. I mean, it's this is this is disaster waiting to happen. Now, again, I don't know the man, so I'm not, this is I don't, but right there, even right there, is a terrible thing to do. When you already know that your opponent um is teeing off on you. So that means a couple of things. Let me talk about this a second. That means that the opponent here is fresh enough at least to keep throwing punches. I'm assuming now who's the guy that got knocked out?
This is Robert Helenius. He's
Okay,
a Finnish
so
heavyweight fighter.
Hellenius.
These are big guys.
Okay, well, so conditioning is probably a big factor here. I'm sure he's gassed. All right,
Yeah, this is the eighth round. You can see that
right.
it's deep in the fight.
Well, when you're that, if it's a sporting aspect of it, you got to tie up and get your wind, um, and all of that. But this is where the problem is. This is a bad habit of keeping your hands down. Okay, psychologically, you can't sometimes separate, the in the heat of battle, the distance and so on. You're just so used to dropping your hands like that. I'm sure when he's fresh and in the gym sparring, he does this as well. This isn't something that he just did right now. This is a habit, and that's a very bad habit. And that's why I talk about. And you're right now. Let's get back to that moving his head back. Um, what he did. Okay, I really want people that may be listening to this podcast to watch it on YouTube, because what happens here is he's still presenting a level target. He's not getting any sort of angle to glance off the punch or rolling underneath the punch. Yeah, he just stepped back, but he stepped back into the punch. If you notice, this guy was throwing right, and he moved in to the punch. Okay, I wish is there. Yeah, boom. He moved right into it. And Cardinal rule. Well, that's a dedication to Joe Cardinal. Cardinal rule number one is generally in boxing, you circle away from the power hand. All right. Well, the guy didn't do that. He circled right into it, and and he did that with his hands down. Uh, and again, please don't. I don't want this guy to get taken it personal. It's just that this was just textbook of how not to do it. And the other guy, Washington, landed a flush punch, and that you saw the result, instant knockout. So, couple of things: lower your head and drive forward. Put your head here into the opponent's chest if you can. All right, or make your opponent back up if you can't bury it into the chest, because obviously when your head is here inside, he's not going to knock you out, unless you're leaving yourself open for an uppercut. Okay, so if you're tired, gassing, you've got to try to tie up. And I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. I mean that he gassed, but man, you've got to learn to keep your hands up. One of my coaches used to say, pull your ears. In essence, keep your hands by your ears. Just keep your hands up. He didn't do any of that.
Right. The other thing that I've two things. Number one, I've heard another podcast, but Sean Porter, who is an ex-world champ, excellent boxing oriented podcast, but covers a lot of business and stuff like that. But he said he said that one of the things that you really need to focus on in boxing is how you have to fight your instinct, your survival instinct, because your survival instinct might dictate that you pull your head straight back. But like you said, you actually have to lean into it in order to be able to prepare for the potential punch landing.
Well, listen, I want, if any of you in the listening audience have pets, let's say a dog, if you just don't hit your dog, I love dogs, but if you just put your hand right, like by the dog's, like fake it, that dog's going to flinch. It's an instinct, right? To flinch. This is an example of what Porter is talking about. We have instincts that you have to overcome. You have to train it out of your system. It can be done. The bad part is you lose that ability. Okay, if you don't keep on training, you're liable to go back into these bad habits. Those are really finite motor skills, like not flinching and so on and pulling back. But one reflex that you should be able to last for the rest of your life is to learn to keep your chin down and keep your hands up. So I'm a firm believer. Now Porter may be different, but no matter how gassed you are, you've got to learn to keep your hands up. You got to have that kind of energy. But he's correct though. You're always fighting your instincts, and that also goes for grappling. Okay, because it's natural to grapple. Human beings and animals get into a wrestle or a tussle situation, and there's a lot of bad things that can happen from that. And you have to train yourself out of that. Like especially with sport grappling, you're actually many times training to make matters worse for yourself. Because you're giving your face, you can get gouged, you could get ripped up, and groin strikes, and you have to constantly or consciously train to avoid that stuff. But if we're sticking strictly to striking, yeah, you've got to break these instincts of pulling away or turning your back and cowering. In essence, these are not good things.
Right, like in the context of wrestling and grappling, one of the things that you see, especially beginners do, they get their hand in a good position to maybe be able to push off on you, and then they'll just leave it there because it feels like a good advantageous position. But in reality, then you break your limbs into something that's now exposed and available to attack by the more experienced grappler. I see that in my kids' jiu-jitsu class. They'll tend to push on the head and push away, and then their arm is completely extended, which of course, a good jiu-jitsu practitioner can put an armbar on it or swing the legs into it.
Right.
The other thing that I've heard, let me play another clip, and this is again Robert Helenius doing the same type of thing. But the other thing that I've heard is that there is something called a shuffle on the pullback. So in other words, if you're getting into a situation where somebody's swinging this big right hand, like you saw another one land there,
yeah,
you shouldn't just pull back, but you should also shuffle, which is two moves, not just one. You're just not moving your head, but you're also moving your body out of the way.
well, okay. Now let's address that. So now we're going into the realm of again of footwork. Can you back it up? Okay. So he didn't. What happened here again is he's not defending himself. See, he opened up there. If you notice, now freeze it for a second. I'll tell people what to watch. He actually opened up. He flared out his left arm. Okay, he didn't even come close to parrying or attempting an outward block on the man's is that Washington or Anthony?
No, this is Anthony Joshua.
Right.
So this is a fight that's happened more recently.
Yeah, and he just opened himself up. Now go ahead if we can do it frame by frame or however you do it. See it right there. Boom. You see how he opened up his left hand instead of bringing the left hand across his face to kind of guard him, and maybe even opening up his mitt, his glove, to cover more mass, more area. He didn't. Okay, so he, in essence, gave him that chance of that right hand. It was just an open doorway. All right, this is just not good. Now, do you happen to know what round this happened?
This is again fairly late. This is, I believe, 7th round.
Yeah, so he may have. I mean, regardless of his condition, this is just fundamentals that you just don't do. Here, look, hand low. I mean, it's just. It's a shame that you don't have a straight on view of that. And I know the camera didn't get that, but maybe we do have it. All right, now watch. Now stop it. Freeze it. Now freeze it. Okay. Yeah, you can see. Now look how how Joshua stepped over a little bit, slightly to the left, to his left, to create an opening. And that's just a perfect shot right on the button, man. And Hellenius did nothing but open the doorway. He didn't. Even if you did, like, remember how George Foreman used to do this, like, cross block.
That's right. The cross block with
Anything like that would have helped. Okay, it would have probably deflected it. Sure, it would have opened up his ribs, or heart punch or something like that. But it would have protected his face. And yeah, and there again, there's no footwork here on Hellenius's thing. It's just that reflex of pulling back. Now, let me tell you something. Muhammad Ali used to do that. He used to pull many
the
times.
rope dope.
Well, no. Let's forget about that. Let's go in the center of the ring. Ali would pull back a lot. He could get away with it, but that was not sound boxing, right? You don't really want to do that. You want to go angles, forward, side to side, or pivots and shit, like you were mentioning the shuffle step. Now that shuffle might be a little difficult where he's at right now because he's
Up
close to
against
the
the
ropes.
ropes. Yeah.
But what you want to do is a hip heist kind of motion. All right, I showed this to you guys, or maybe you weren't there the previous month at the previous workshop, or 2 months before that, like when you're up against the wall and how you can easily just hip heist out of it. Well, so in essence, you plant your front foot and you just pull your rear leg behind you. So you're pivoting that way. And naturally you have to keep your hands up. But the good news is if you time it right and you do this pivot while Joshua is throwing his right hand, he's going to miss the right hand. And now Joshua is going to be open for a counter overhand left, okay? Or even a hook to the body, to the liver especially. So you're slipping in a way, you're slipping that left, or excuse me, you're slipping Joshua's right hand. But you're out of the way. He's in front of you, you're not in front of him. And that's the ultimate goal in boxing or any strikes. So yeah, I would honestly chalk this up to with Hellenius. I would say, without knowing, I've never even heard of the guy until now. I would chalk it up to, like, just not, bad fundamentals, because one of your instincts in sparring is learning how to tie up or learning certain things when you're gassed. Okay. How to, defend yourself while gassed. And I've talked about this before regarding self-defense. If you guys, like, if people listening to this are drunk, or they're alcoholics or they're dope addicts and shit, whatever it is, and you're not going to crack that habit, hey man, sometimes it's worth it to train under those circumstances, right? When you're drunk or when you're buzzed, right? To see how you react. Well, it's the same here with the boxing or the sport, grappling. It don't matter what it is. How do you react when you're gassed? How's your thinking, thought process? What are your instincts? That's where the coach has to watch and say, okay, your instincts are telling you to do something bad that's going to get you in trouble. So now we have to drill while you're fresh on another day. While you're fresh, we have to keep drilling, keep those hands up in this instance, keep those hands up, or shift, pivot right, and do that relentlessly for X amount of time. It depends on how long it takes you to learn it. And then try it again when you're gassed and see if your instincts are starting to pick up. It's time consuming, but it's the only way to be.
Right. Like, I think people underestimate conditioning as a way of ensuring that those instincts stay intact. Because, like, even in other sports, I've played a lot of team sports. The coaches will pull you out of the game when you're tired, not because you can't, do a run, or, kick the ball when you're playing soccer or whatever, but because your average output is below what it normally is when you're in good shape. So, your performance degrades. It doesn't stop, but it's so much worse that you're not performing at your optimal level. And therefore, you might as well leave the game and put somebody fresh in. And in boxing, the consequences are instantaneous.
I believe it was Vince Lombardi, the coach of the Packers, that said, fatigue makes cowards of us all, right? And that's true. When you're fatigued or when you're gassed, it's common sense. You can't operate in peak efficiency. So yeah, but dealing with instincts, you have to, this to me seems a fundamental flaw here. Okay. This is just a bad habit of him exposing himself and dropping his hands. day one in the gym, let's say you never boxed a day in your life and you come to me. And as you know, I'm a stickler for this. I always want you to keep your hands up, and immediately I'm working on head movement. All right. Aaron, who you were sparring with last, the last workshop a couple weeks ago, um, his head movement, he's got to work on all that and his footwork. It's so critical. It's so important to get it going. Um, it's just it's fundamentals. And some fighters do a lot more head movement than others. Johnny Lira, who I knew very well, and he passed away in 2012. His main coach was Chuck Bodak, and Johnny was not he didn't do a lot of movement, right? And Chuck Bodak said, gasses you out and so on. Well, you know, that was in the 70s. We know conditioning can overcome all that. You should be able to move, just you should be able to go for, a long, long time, work on your conditioning, right? But when John Lira fought Howard Davis, and I believe the clip's on YouTube, or the fight is on YouTube, Johnny told me the first couple of rounds he was doing fine. Johnny Lira was doing fine. Why? Because Howard Davis was stationary. Now, for those of you who don't know, he was a gold medalist in '76, in the Olympics, and he was fast. He probably faster than Sugar Ray Leonard. And Howard sadly passed away several years ago. But so Johnny was able to tee off, right? But then all of a sudden, Howard caught his gear, and then that was pretty much the beginning of the end for Johnny Lira, right? When Howard was moving around and getting all those funky angles and shit, it was a whole different ball game. So I mean, there's no excuse for heavyweights not to do it. I mean, Ali had some great movement. Mike Tyson had great movement. Even a guy like Larry Holmes, who wasn't flashy, like he had great angles. And he had a terrific jab. Uh, these are things that I believe when when Holmes fought Tyson, way past Holmes' prime. It went several rounds. I mean, it wasn't like a 1 round knockout. I don't
It
remember.
was about 4 rounds, I think. And
Yeah,
Holmes
right.
was actually, I rewatched that fight recently because we talked about one of the things that you insisted is that we throw the jab better, like a piston.
Yeah.
You can't just paw at it. And I went back and I watched the Holmes Tyson fight, and Holmes was doing very well defensively for like 4 rounds, I think. And then somebody told him that he's behind on all cards because he was just defending. And then he went out, tried to get Tyson, and he got laid out.
Okay. Well, now I'm sure most of the studio audience. What am I? This is the Price is Right. Come on down. My friend was just on the Price is Right last week. She didn't get picked, but she went to the taping of it. So I don't know when that episode's gonna be. So Lori, if you're watching, hey Lori, Lori number one. I know several Lori. She's Lori number one. Anyway, yeah, if you're in a self-defense situation, street fight, that's all you really want. You just need some time, right, to do other things, to tie up or have somebody break it up or just end it. So so what I was basically saying is the people listening here aren't probably looking to turn pro as a boxer, but still, all these skills, if you can go 4 rounds with Tyson at that time,
In his prime.
right, you're going to be okay in a street fight, all right, as far as getting in a striking situation with someone. I'm not, so I should, let's not say street, yeah, just like a street fight, not like a life or death scenario where weapons are involved. It's a whole different story. But yeah, you're going to be fine, for sure. So yeah,
Yeah.
Tyson, or not Tyson, but Holmes. Well, Tyson had great hooks and head movement and everything, but Holmes had a great jab. I remember that, and uh, I just think Larry Holmes, he came around at a difficult time in boxing for him, and said some things about Marciano that kind of didn't sit well. But hey man, he had tough shoes to fill, man, with Muhammad Ali. That's who wants to follow that opening act, right? No.
Right, that's right. And he wasn't nearly the personality that Ali was, so he struggled just being accepted as a champ in the absence of Ali. He was like a pale shadow
Yeah, right.
of the previous champ. But yeah, to your point, that's like a solid 12 minutes of survival with the prime Mike Tyson looking to rip his head off, and that's a lot better than some of the other people did. So skills do translate to useful outcomes. After 12 minutes with Tyson, most of us would be in a body bag.
yeah, and that's indicative of Larry's foundation. I believe I could. You're catching me off guard, but I believe that Larry Holmes at one point was a sparring partner for Muhammad Ali. Okay,
That's right. That's right.
so yeah, and so in order to, and let me just digress a bit. When you're a sparring partner for Muhammad Ali, you have some skills. Okay, you have some talent. Ali's not going to waste his time fighting, sparring with a tomato can, unless it is he's doing some you know exhibition match or charity match, and he's just looking to get rounds in for conditioning. So Larry had good fundamentals. Okay, just fundamentally a sound fighter. Um, and and again, uh, he probably made a mistake, like you said, listening to you know the poor advice. The thing is, uh, Tyson was an anomaly at that point to me. He was a freak. He was just, and I say that in a good way, in a positive way. He was ferocious. And I'll bet you Larry Holmes had thoughts in his head, but at his age, what's up here, he couldn't translate into efficient movement, which happens to all of us as we age. So therefore, it's even more important for us. And this is getting back to what I said at the beginning of this podcast. A good defense is so important, because we may know what to do offensively, but our timing is off, or our reflexes are maybe just, it's not what they were. So we may not be able to pull it off. So we got to wait until we run into a Hellenius situation where the opponent that you're fighting in a street or whatever just gives you something that even Ray Charles couldn't miss, boom, those wide open shots. And
Right.
believe me, I can tell you this, that when you put on a good defense, both with your guard and with your head movement and footwork, the opponent can get frustrated and make mistakes. Okay. It can get sloppy. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for that opening. And you can create that opening sometimes by just, using the right angle. And we do this, everybody knows this. We do this in our day-to-day life when we're looking to physically do something, move something. Okay. Sometimes we can't move it head on. We've got to get a little angle on it and push it or whatever to get us better leverage and so on. It's the same in a fight game. You've got to sometimes create that opening or that advantageous situation for yourself by changing your angle and your approach. So it's really, yeah, it's important to do.
Right. And speaking of doing these angles, there's some good striking that comes out of the UFC once in a while also. So like in this match here, this was a recent bout, and you can see Sean O'Malley is the guy that lands a punch. And I just wanted to point out how he moves just a tiny bit off center, and this is coming up here soon. And what really happens is the other person, having committed to a punch, gets dropped.
Okay, now can we rewind that and go slow or something? Because
I am gonna have troubles
well,
going
if
slow.
you
I'm
go to
just
that circle thing, like by where it says CC, yeah, go to one more over to right there. Click that and go to playback speed. Okay,
okay. We can do that, sure.
yeah, just go like half
Half
speed.
speed. I'll
Yeah.
go half speed, and then if you take a look, so this is some,
Well, you kind of went too far back.
yeah,
Let's just get
but
to
it
the
should be
point.
coming here. So there's definitely like a big shot coming up, and
Okay.
then a slight movement to the side.
All right. Well, just all right. You're okay. Okay. There's that kick. Now, all right. So here's the issue, and he did do a little. So he came with an overhand right, but the problem is, I just want you to back it up, and I want you to focus on the punch. Okay. I want you to focus on Sterling's punch. That's the that's the key here. Okay, because he's fighting out of a southpaw situation here. So now watch his right hand. Okay, that all right. First of all, freeze it good. Um, not not a smart. He's O'Malley's out of range. Okay, so that punch isn't going to land. Even if it does, it's going to be to no effect. Just way out of range. Now go again and then watch after he throws it. Watch his left arm loop down. See, all right, boom. See how it just looped down, right? It came straight down. It did not come back up to cover his face. Once again, he left a wide open target.
Would you
Wide
say
open.
he's would you say he's overreaching?
Oh, who?
Sterling, the guy
Absolutely.
throwing the punch.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
He was out of range for that punch. Okay. And I get it. The guy threw a kick, so now he's backing up. But you've got to, when you're throwing those haymakers, and here's the deal. O'Malley was in charge. I mean, so it wasn't like you're just miraculously throwing a punch. He led with a wild, with a wild punch. I'm trying to get these names straight. Sterling led with a wild punch. Okay, anybody can probably make that mistake, but the problem wasn't even with that. The problem was he brought that left hand down again and left himself wide open. You can't do that. You just simply you gotta when you throw these punches, you've got to bring that hand right back to a defensive posture. And he switched stances too, by the way. So he went from a southpaw stance. If you notice now, he's in an orthodox stance. It's just, not. It's a fundamental breakdown, is what it is. It just really is a fundamental breakdown. Go ahead.
Right. So, from my perspective, like from me trying to avoid, obviously
See,
this
no,
is
wait, right there. See, look. Now, you see, back that up, because this is really important. And when I tell you to freeze it, freeze it.
Sure.
Freeze. Okay. So now freeze it. So they just touched gloves. Okay. So he already knew that O'Malley was fully extended. This is, let's see, Sterling doesn't have his range. Okay. Go a little more with the play. Go ahead, play it. Okay. Now keep going. Right there. Stop. Okay. He should have known he's totally out of range. All right.
Yeah,
Because
that's a missed punch,
it
right?
is.
Like,
Because Sterling wrapped his hand on top of the O'Malley's wrist, and O'Malley was almost basically fully extended. And not only is he fully extended, he's in a orthodox stance, which means the right side of his body is even further away. That was an ill-advised punch. Now, as you can see, he's wide open. Sterling is wide open here. All right, he's just throwing look at his left foot. It looks to me like it's off the ground, so there's not even any power coming on this punch. It's an arm punch, and he's wide open. And then if we can, I don't know how you do a frame by frame advance on YouTube, but you'll see that he'll drop that left hand right there. Okay, you figured it out. And now O'Malley is getting set. Now I don't like O'Malley being wide open either, but O'Malley's getting set to unleash that right hand. Go ahead, boom, he popped it, and Sterling had no defense because he was wide open. Again, this is almost like the Hellenius fight, where you're just kind of leaving yourself wide open. These are risks. I mean, sometimes it pays off with these haymakers, but
yeah, I was looking
to
pull something that's kind of similar in its basic.
Yeah.
Like the Hellenius thing, I thought was more about defensively, the pulling back. Here, I was kind of thinking for us, people that are just training to be fundamentally competent and not, competitive. The thing to watch for is not reaching, because I hear this you hear corners call out to their fighters, don't reach for the punch.
Well, look at O'Malley's right foot. Okay, he's still on the balls of his feet, so there's some power behind that punch. Okay, he put his body weight behind it. All right, his hip is turned, his right hip. All right, his left hip is pulled back, so it's almost like a hook. It's not, but same kind of mechanics. He put something behind that punch, and he hit him on the spot. Right, he hit him right on. It looked like I think he hit him right on the button. And there's no reason to play any more of this, because I did see this clip last night when you sent it to me. I just watched that part, and once it hit the ground, it was sad. It was just these ridiculous punches and shit that you don't want to emulate at all. All right, but that part there, O'Malley did a great job. But again, it's easy for me to say armchair quarterbacking, but I think the other guy, Sterling, yeah, he was too anxious here. Yeah, and he did reach for it. He could have waited, bide his time, and then make Sterling or make O'Malley come to you. Okay, come to me, O'Malley, and then let's see what you got. And get those angles and then boom, pop them. That didn't happen. So again, sadly, he ends up losing a fight because of that.
Right. So I think I mentioned this to you before, but I do really enjoy how during some of the telecasts they pipe in the corner man instructions during the fight. They do it in top rank boxing in particular, and it's always something very basic. It's never like, yeah, throw a 7 punch combo ending with number 6 or number 3 to the body. None of that. It's always like close the distance or shuffle back or keep your hands up or keep your chin down. Very basic stuff, which is what I wanted us to focus on, because again, like small things that are important to keep all the way through potentially a long period of time. And when I say long period of time, I mean like 3 minutes. That's a long period of time.
Well, I mean, yeah, in an actual fight, yeah, it is. But I mean, like a street encounter or whatever, it's a lifetime, and it could be the loss of a life, So it's like really important that you have your fundamentals. And it was interesting because one of the guys that was at the workshop uh, before you because you actually didn't participate in the workshop, you came later for a private lesson. He had some boxing training, and it was kind of surprising that he doesn't he didn't get that how effective boxing is in MMA or anything else. I mean, the skill sets, it's not rules. Forget about the rules. See, I think it's another thing. I think people get caught up in the rules. Forget the rules for a minute. It's the fundamental skill sets that you develop. Okay. So with boxing, man, you got that great, tremendous head movement. You got the keeping your hands up. You got the learning the range, footwork, conditioning. You bring all of that to the table. All right. It's not that, okay, every boxer is going to beat every wrestler. It's that's not what I'm talking about. But I'm talking about when shit happens like this clip we just saw would not have happened or would not have more than likely happened with a very skilled boxer. He would never put himself in that position to get knocked out like that. He wouldn't have made that crazy punch. And there's other factors, learning how to take a punch, learning how to absorb it. MMA guys or kickboxers even aren't going to have that ability as a boxer would, because boxers are in essence one-dimensional in the fact that they're just throwing hands. Kickboxers throwing hands and legs. Thai boxers, elbows, knees. MMA, grappling, all that added in. So you're obviously never going to be world class, okay, at anything, at any one thing, unless you came as a world champion from another sport. So it's hard to excel. The trick is get fundamentally sound, which doesn't take a lifetime. Get fundamentally sound in all those ranges of combat and know instinctively where you're breaking down. Like if you're a boxer, you're striking, you got to know, okay, my fundamentals here are breaking down. If I'm grappling now, my fundamentals are breaking down. You got to get to that safe spot. That is something that needs to be taught, okay? And unfortunately, it isn't in mass, okay? So I have a lot of respect for athletes that are absolutely great at what they do, like sport grapplers or a boxer or a judo. Your credentials are there. We get it. We know it. I don't care about what you can do. I care about what you can't do, because a smart fighter is going to capitalize on what you can't do. And believe me, there's going to be shit you can't do, and you can't do very well, and in some instances you do quite poorly. And that's the risk you run in MMA or in a street scenario, of knowing what you can't do. So if you can be fundamentally sound, you have your basis of, let's say, boxing and wrestling, and there have been great fighters in the past that boxed very well and wrestled very well. Combo guys like that. There were, maybe they didn't do submissions, but who cares at that point? They were very difficult to beat. Paul Berlenbach was one guy. Excuse me, back in the 20s. He was an AAU national champion wrestler. National champ. Not Olympic, but national champ. That means you're friggin' good. Became the light heavyweight boxing champion of the world. I mean, come on. That's,
right.
And I mean, and there's others. I mean, I know that.
Two feathers in his hat.
Yeah. Well, Danny Hodge boxed. I mean, he wasn't like his wrestling was what was the superlative, but he was a national Golden Glove champ. So, you know, uh, here you go. And I know there's others, but when you have that kind of combination of skills, you're going to be tough to beat, and that's just the way it is.
Right, and this kind of dovetails to this other thing that we've talked about, and Demetrius Johnson made the news recently because he said something controversial. He said that it's easy to become an MMA champ because most of the MMA people are not actually good at anything in particular. And that seems controversial, but to your point, they're not decorated boxers, they're not decorated wrestlers. They're kind of dabblers in multiple disciplines.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't say it's easy to be a champ. It's easier, maybe, but that's again because um, there used to be some Olympians, like Kevin Jackson and others that wrestled, and for a while did quite well. But that was it was a different time in the MMA. But what Demetrius said, I will, in essence, agree that. All right, okay, look, let's look at a relationship, right? Um, I put things in funky terms sometimes. You break up with the love of your life, and you're all down and just you're crying the blues, and then you think all the time, well, she did this for me, she did this for me, she did this for me. But a sound friend will tell you, well, think about all the bad shit, okay, and make a list, put a line down the middle, put all the good stuff on one side, put all the bad stuff on the next. Normally, the bad side might outweigh the good, and that's how you have to look at it at MMA. You may be okay at certain things, certain skill sets. Okay. But man, if you're bad at others, the bad can just completely negate any positives that you have. And that's just a fact. And I think that's kind of what Demetrius was probably getting at. We'd have to ask him for clarity. But yeah, you're a jack, like the jack of all trades, master of none. And I see that with people that I train. They have the spirit. They want to learn all these different martial arts or different things. They got 4, 5, 6 coaches, different coaches at different locations. This is not going to work out. Okay. This is not what you need. All right. You need to get good at a few things. Understand like 2 things, maybe get really good at them and understand the fundamentals in and out. And that's the secret of learning how to learn. Now you can pick up another art and say, okay, what are the fundamentals? So, yeah, I just think that with MMA, you have so many ranges. Not all ranges. I mean, there's there's no, they don't work for defending against vulnerable targets or weapons or mass, 2-on-1s and 3-on-1s. But there comes a point where, you're just going to suck at something, and you cannot allow your opponent to capitalize on that. So let's break this down quickly, and I'll be done talking. It starts on the feet, and many times it ends on the ground. So if you have good stand-up skills, decent stand-up skills, and decent ground skills, that's it. You're all right. But when you don't have that, and you try to get fancy, or you try to do this or that, that's when you're vulnerable. And I don't like to watch MMA because I just think the striking is just subpar generally. When I mean that, I don't mean not just the way they throw the punches, but there's no head movement, there's no angles, there's no footwork. It's rare. I mean, I'm not saying everybody's like that, but I'm just giving a generalization. I can't watch it. Okay. It's just like, man, this is not good. And the same thing happens sometimes on the ground. It's just, there's not the lack of that sophistication. This is just me, my opinion. So these guys are very tough men. Do not get me wrong. They're very dedicated and they do their thing. So, but yeah, I guess I can kind of agree with Demetrius. I'd like to get a little clarity on that though, because there are some very skilled guys. I mean, what's his name? Shit. The heavyweight that turned Brock Lesnar. Okay. He was a national champ. So he was a very skilled wrestler, although I think he also got beat by Steve Neal, who ended up playing pro football.
That's right. Yeah,
yeah,
he did.
but he can't strike. I mean, Lesnar was not a striker. Lesnar was not a submission guy. If I was Lesnar or if I was his coach, I would say just forget everything. Don't even worry about submissions. Okay. It's too late in the game for this. Just teach them how to cover up and get in and really focus on fundamentals, not exchanging punches for 3 rounds, but exchanging punches for or 30 seconds, 40, whatever it is, to get in there and take the guy down and then learn how to defend against these common attacks that a jiu-jitsu guy or some other grappler would try to use on you, and use your what is your skill to its maximum. Don't start farting around and experimenting in a range of combat that you are just not world class at. Like it would be like, would you want to watch Mike Tyson, in a kick, start kicking or trying to do takedowns? Of course you wouldn't, because now he sucks at that. Let's say, I'm just saying, I don't know the guy like that, but let's just say you don't want to see that. You pay to see Tyson do what he did, okay, and he did it as good as anybody for that period of time. So that's why I'm not a huge fan of MMA, because they start to get out of their area of expertise, and it's subpar to me.
Right. Yeah. And I agree that I watch it a lot less than I used to, because I feel like the kind of mavens of certain disciplines are not there anymore. Everybody's kind of like gaming the rules to the extent that they need to, and they put on a pretty good show, but the artistry isn't there, and that's kind of what I enjoyed back in the day.
Well, I used to like the very first ones. I mean, not because of the skills, but it was like kind of neat to see an actual Hapkido guy or whatever against a sumo guy, or
Right, but some of those guys were maybe top Hapkido guys, and they would do something crazy, which maybe not work at all, but you'd see some level of artistry and all that.
Yeah, it was kind of fun to watch that, because
Yes.
and it's historic. Because like when you see a Taekwondo guy trying to just fight this whole fight as a Taekwondo guy, it takes you all the way back to Jun Rhee or some ancient Korean guy, some legend Korean guy, and you can say, oh, see, so maybe that's how the ancient Korean guy would have done it, or that's that judo guy, that's how Jigoro Kano might have done it. Now we see how judo works, or whatever. I mean, I'm painting it over with, like I'm making light of it, but it was more entertaining to me that way. Yeah, now everybody's doing the same thing, in essence,
Right.
and some do it better than others, but you know, I just, I'm a stickler. That I want things done properly. And, sometimes when I just see things that are just not well, I get annoyed. And getting back to Hellenius, here's a boxer that his fundamental boxing broke down. So it's not like every boxer is perfect every minute he's in the round. No, no, nobody is. But when they are cooking with gas, they're lethal. But when you don't even have that lethality, okay, uh, you know, you're kind of screwed. When you can't turn it up a notch, when your top notch that you have isn't very good, yeah, you're in trouble.
Right. Right. Okay, so maybe we should wrap it up here for this episode. And I encourage everybody to check out Tony's materials. He's been doing this for a very long time, and we're going to be focusing on small, tangible, universally applicable principles. And that's what I get out of Tony's training, and it's great.
Yeah, maybe next week we'll do if you can find some street self-defense videos, or not like instructionals, but like,
Yeah, same
what.
principles apply. That's what I say.
Yeah, right, because it's all about principles. And actually, you don't even have to get two guys that are good. Just get two slugs that don't know what they're doing, and we can talk about that. But anyway, everybody, hopefully we're going to be back on track with the podcast, and maybe Joe will have a reset button and eventually join us again. I'll see Joe. He'll be coming to the next workshop in a couple of weeks. What is it? The
The 23rd.
23rd? Yeah, the
Yeah.
23rd at Bender's Martial Arts and Fitness, 1:30 to 3:30 in Andersonville. It's on my website. Just go up to the top of my website and click training or whatever, and you'll upcoming seminars or workshops, it'll say. But anyway, everybody, thanks, and we'll see you next week.